What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Athletes and Assets podcast. I mean, look where we are, man. Incredible vineyard owned by NFL legend Drew Bledsoe, 3-time Pro Bowler, 14 years in the NFL. Me and Drew chat a lot about his winery, the story, the challenges, and the highs and lows of an entrepreneur. If you can, though, before we begin, if you like, subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, leave us a comment. That'd be much appreciated so we continue to bring on amazing guests. All right, let's get right into it. We just got to start off like this, Drew. Where the heck are we right now?
We are in my hometown, Walla Walla, Washington. This is where I grew up. It was an awesome place to grow up. You've gotten to experience a little bit of it, but it's just a little Norman Rockwell painting of a town, tree-lined streets and beautiful rolling hills. And we got a little smoke today. I think they're doing a controlled burn, but it was a beautiful place. And it was the kind of place, growing up here, I'm certain that we had a key to our house. I never knew where it was. We would leave on vacation and not lock the house.
Yeah.
And then sports-wise, it was so fun because, the whole town would turn out for football games and basketball games, and so it was a really special place to grow up.
This place is remote, man. I mean, to get here was like 4 different stops. And I heard you're not I heard you're not an airport guy. You more like to drive over the region, prefer regional airport travel. But man, it's like one way in, one way out here. This is interesting.
We said when we were living here, we knew who our real friends were because they were never on their way to someplace else when they stopped to see us, because it's really not on the way to anywhere. This is the destination, which is cool too. From a feel standpoint, it's harder to get to, so it hasn't just blown up like some places have. We love to see the wine tourism, but we prefer that people come and drink wine and then go back home so we can keep our little small town. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. Well, we cut the BS here, Drew. What I'm going to do is actually taste you on your own wine. So I have this cheat sheet, Drew. This is some of your wines, and we're going to see how well you actually know your stuff.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to taste test. So first off, of the Bledsoe family wine estates, you have multiple.
Yeah, we have three different wineries.
Okay.
With their own specific purpose. Doubleback was the original. That's high-end Cabernet. We've been top 100 wines in the world a few times with that wine. It's a really special one, and that was our original reason for being. Then we started Bledsoe Family Winery second, and that's focused on a wider variety of wines with some Cab, some Syrah, some Rosé, some Chardonnay. We have a special wine under that label that's named after my dad, the Mac, which is a blend. And then we started Bledsoe McDaniels more recently, and that's a nod to Josh McDaniels, who's our winemaker. And for those football fans out there, it's not also the same Josh McDaniels.
That's what I thought too. I thought it was a different Josh McDaniels.
No, this is the winemaker, Josh McDaniels.
You don't know where these wines are coming from? I mean,
Well, you told me they're mine, so that's.
Well, it could be a trick. You don't know.
If they're ours, I've got a better shot at.
I want you to test this one, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And tell me what you're doing, and then when you give a taste, kind of describe.
Well, the first thing you're going to look at it first. So this is obviously not Pinot Noir.
And why is it not obviously Pinot Noir?
Because Pinot Noir is a little lighter in color, and you can see through it.
By the way, I love acting sophisticated at restaurants when I have no wine knowledge. When they give me it, and I kind of
you hold it up, and then if you're really getting dorky, you can tell whether it's old or young. Because if it's older, then it'll get kind of orange around the edges. So you can be just really wine dorky and look at it. And,
let's get dorky though. We want to get an education in.
And then I know what this wine is based on the nose. I was proud to tell our winemaking team recently that we collect a lot of wine from all over the world and all that stuff. But after 18 years in this business, I still love to get high on our own supply. I love to drink our own wine. I really, really do. It's and so.
Man, that's yeah. Give that a taste. Oh, cheers! By the way, sorry. Mm-hmm. Cheers. How could I? Yeah. Which one are you guessing?
I mean, that's got to be Doubleback Cab. If it's not, I'm really happy because that means whatever we're drinking is a pretty damn close representation of Doubleback Cab.
Well, I hope you feel good because you're incorrect.
Really?
Yeah, this is the Bledsoe family, the Mac. This is the Mac.
Oh, is it really? That's Dad's wine?
Yeah.
Wow, that's Dad'll be really happy. God, it's got a Doubleback nose to it.
But I like what you said about your bias towards Walla Walla. I was going to bring that up because I'm going to go back to 2001. During your injury, you're with sort of your teammates, and you guys would put wine in plastic bags and kind of try them out.
Yeah.
And whether it's bias or your genuine belief, you thought your teammates thought the Walla Walla wine was the best out of all the stuff you guys would try.
Yeah, we would blind taste, put them in paper bags, put them on the counter, and we would just simply taste through them all and vote on what we liked best. And everybody's pretty competitive, so everybody was trying to bring the best bottle of wine that night. And so it was fancy, expensive Napa stuff and Bordeaux stuff, and I would always throw something from Walla Walla into the lineup, and every time we did, we would vote, and at the end, the last bottle unveiled was from Walla Walla, and for me, that was sort of the epiphany that my little hometown is not just making wine, but we're making wine that will stand up against the world's best.
Was that the spark of you? Would you say that was sort of the genesis of your entrepreneurial journey? Thinking like, one day I can actually come here and make a business out of it?
It really was. I mean, it was just a confluence of really three things that led us in that direction. Number one, we like wine. Start there, right? Number two, I played 14 years, which is a long career, but I was still only 35. It's not time to just go sit in the rocking chair, and I'm not good enough at golf to play golf every day. But then the piece that tied it all together was the fact that my hometown, where I grew up, was producing some of my very favorite wines in the whole world. Because I really didn't.
Was that biased? Like my hometown, feels like it tastes like home.
You know what? Yeah, I'm certain that there's bias involved.
But that's okay.
I will admit that for certain. It's sort of like the chicken or the egg, right? Did we start making wine in Walla Walla, because I love the wines, or do I love the wines because I grew up in Walla Walla? But either way, I love the wines. So the end is the same, and I will admit bias. But man, there's a lot of people that agree with me, which is pretty fun.
No, 100%. And I by the way, I like your intersection of passions, because I think wine and skiing, that's a pretty, like, I can get along with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And
you'll appreciate that my wife gives me a lot of crap when I tell her that I'm going cat skiing and it's a work trip. She's like, "Oh, really? You're going cat skiing? It's a work trip?" Well, I tell her though, like, hey, people that go cat skiing like to drink fancy wine. And so I go on these ski trips. I end up selling a ton of wine, and it doesn't, it just so happens that I'm having a lot of fun doing it. But man, we found some great customers cat skiing up in British Columbia.
That's a great, what a great work expense. Put that on the company card.
It's a great business trip. Yeah. It's a great business trip.
That's a great business trip. And speaking of business, I remember hearing you tell a story about you love skiing so much you accidentally revealed it to Robert Kraft, and they ended up putting a clause in your contract. Yeah. If you got hurt, you would have to pay back your signing bonus?
Yeah, I was young and stupid, and right after, because Mr. Kraft bought the team after my first year, and after that first season, I took my dad, who was a school teacher, and we were never going to go heli skiing. Well, I took that heli skiing. Well, I came back and told Robert Kraft about our amazing heli skiing trip. And I remember he looked at me kind of funny. So next thing you know, in my next contract, there was some very specific language about how much money I had to pay them back if I got hurt skiing. I didn't come clean until to him for many years after I retired that I actually skied the whole time. And we got an insurance policy from Lloyd's of London for 30 days of skiing every year, so that I was covered if I got hurt. But the real trick was that I had good ski buddies in Montana. And I told him, look, if I get hurt skiing, if I'm dying, call ski patrol. If I'm not dying, you idiots figure out how to get me down the mountain. We'll go to the gym. I'll put on some basketball shoes, and I'll get hurt playing basketball. Yeah. Because that was legal.
You ever sent Robert Kraft a bottle your
Oh yeah. He's actually we have a small group of really tiny investors in the winery, and he actually is an investor in the winery.
Oh, it's amazing.
So he gets free wine every year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Knowing that Walla Walla had something special. Mm-hmm. And then we go to 2007, the first start of the Doubleback Winery.
Yeah.
That's were you going in blind? Was there imposter syndrome, or like what was the
Yeah, there was definitely some imposter syndrome. That was very real, by the way. Just because I threw a football didn't mean I knew shit about wine. But thankfully, because hometown boy, I was able to hire my next door neighbor, Chris Figgins, who I mentioned earlier, as our first winemaker, and he really at that point. Gave us some educated advice on where to plant, and then he was making the wine for us, and he'd already been making wine his whole life.
Yeah.
So I was able to cheat a little bit by hiring great talent, and then I've learned along the way. And then since then, Josh McDaniels, who's been our winemaker now for the last decade, was Chris's protege. So he worked on our wines, every vintage, I think, except the very first one in 2007.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's do another test.
Yeah.
Right now you're 0 for 1. But
I know I am 0 for 1.
We'll try
but now that you tell me, now I'm looking at it, the nose fooled me.
Now you know.
And now I'm looking around the edge. I'm seeing a little purple there. That probably should have given away that it was that there was a little Syrah in that.
So here's number 2. So we'll see what you can do here.
Okay. Yeah. Now
you seem very confident.
Now,
a lot of confidence over there.
Now that's why blind tasting. The only thing that makes me feel good about it is I've sat with people that are studying for their master sommelier test, and watched these 10 people sit around, and they get it wrong a lot. And I'm like, okay, cool. That kind of takes the pressure off a little bit. You can still enjoy wine and be fooled from time to time. But I'll be a little more meticulous with this one.
What's your guess? What do we got?
Yeah, that's Doubleback.
Doubleback.
Yeah, for sure.
Correct.
Yeah, for sure.
And what I appreciate about you starting Doubleback was not naming it after yourself, because there was a stigma right at that time when that if an NFL player was making a wine, it would be sort of inferior. Why do you think that is? And then talk about sort of your intentionality to make it another name.
Yeah, so there was a stigma around, quote unquote celebrity wine projects. And, the reason was a lot of the wines weren't very good. A lot of the wines were essentially, a lot of them were kind of endorsement deals.
Yeah. Buying it as a fan, not buying it for the product.
Yeah, exactly. And wine's different. It's not Gatorade, it's not a candy bar. It's people are serious about it, and they want to know the wine's serious. I think when people are thinking about wine, they want it to be about the quality of the wine. Not buying it because some football player, actor, golfer, whatever, put their name on it. And that's how I felt too. We collected a lot of wines, and I sort of just discounted those wines in my mind. And so we wanted, with Doubleback, with our first one. We wanted the story to be the real story. Small town kid gets to grow up here in Walla Walla, got to live out my childhood dream like it is for so many young people. And I got to be an NFL quarterback for 14 years, and after that I doubled back and came back home. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted that to be the story, not dumb jock starts winery,
Sure.
Small town kid comes back home.
Sure. What do you think is something about the wine industry you didn't know about when you jumped into it that just shocked you?
When we started, it reminded me of a quote from Bill Parcells in my rookie year, when he said to me, he goes, "Bledsoe, you don't even know what you don't know." Right? And so when I got into the business, not only did I not know very much, I didn't even know what I needed to know to start learning. So the amount that I didn't know was just voluminous.
Voluminous. That's a word.
There you go. Thanks. My mom would be proud. Mom was an English teacher, so she likes it when I throw in a vocab word.
That is like SAT level 3. That's
yeah, there you go. Mom would be proud. There are some interesting pieces they're kind of boring to talk about, but those are the parts you didn't know about. Like when you're just selling wine in the United States, each state is its own entity, so it's like 50 different countries with your compliance.
Did you get a license
because you're selling alcohol, and I got to be a lobbyist in Massachusetts to get the law changed out there so that we could direct ship into Massachusetts.
Wow.
And being a lobbyist was dirtier than I even imagined. It's like, wow, this is like, grade school politics, like just petty grievances and all that stuff. So we got
to get in the right with people.
Yeah, exactly.
Wine literally wine and dine them.
Yeah, well, but then you can't actually give them wine because so it's
you're not approved
you're
yet.
bribing, as I get that. So it was, so that part was in just the compliance piece is brutal. I never even took an accounting course in college, but learned accounting on the fly. Those are the boring pieces.
How much did you learn about accounting before you learned that you needed someone to help probably with accounting?
Oh no, I needed somebody to help right away,
Yeah.
Immediately, because I knew that I didn't know.
Same.
On that piece, and so we've thankfully have had brilliant people handling that piece. And then you also learn that ultimately you're a farmer, which means Mother Nature's in control.
Yeah.
Now we do everything that we can, and we'll talk about this later with how we build sustainable and really healthy vineyards. But Mother Nature, like last year, flexed her muscles on us and brought in this extreme cold snap in January that caused this vineyard that we're looking at not to produce fruit for that year, killed all the buds, and then same with our Flying Bee vineyard right at the winery. Didn't produce any fruit for the vintage last year. So we have 5 vineyards here, and 2 of them didn't produce any fruit, which sucks.
Is that death to a lot of vineyards that don't know what they're doing? Or does Mother Nature kill vineyards, or is it more so like you can find ways around it?
Put it this way, so we can all get sick, right? But if you're healthier and your body's healthier, you have a better chance of fighting it off.
Yep.
Right? But that doesn't mean, we all know people that are very, very fit that have just dropped dead or got cancer or whatever. So, you can't become impervious to Mother Nature, but you can build a stronger ecosystem that has a better chance of surviving.
Yeah.
So we have very healthy vineyards, but it got down to like 16 or 17 below zero here. And
wow.
So it doesn't matter how healthy you are when if you're a person and it's 16 below zero, you're not outside very long before you're dead.
No, I've never heard of frozen wine before.
Actually, ice wine's pretty good, but this was not that.
Okay, yeah. Would you say that's been sort of the toughest part of the business for you, or is there another aspect where that's?
No, it's the whole business it's a very competitive business. People have asked me over time, you're like, hey, so you leave football, where do you find that that competitiveness? Where's the outlet for the competitiveness? Well, I left football and I got into the most competitive industry in the world by the number of products. It's the most competitive industry by a long shot.
If I'm not mistaken, 50,000. There's like 50,000.
Yeah, roughly 50,000 unique bottles of wine made worldwide every year, and you're trying to stand out in that crowd. We're competitive. Our team is very competitive. We have a championship level team across the board, from our farm team all the way through our sales team and everybody in between. But it's a different kind of competition, especially here in the Valley.
Yeah.
In football, I want the other team to lose, and I want them to lose bad.
Sure.
And if it's the Jets, for example, I don't want them to ever win another game, right? But in this industry, we're competing to be the very best that we can be, but we're also helping our quote-unquote competitors that are our neighbors, because if they make better wine, that's good for us.
Okay.
And so it's a sort of a collective competition to raise the bar in the Valley.
So locally, like a rising tide lifts all boats.
For sure.
With the wine industry.
Absolutely, it does. And we've been the beneficiary of that. When we first got into the business, some of the godfathers of Walla Walla, if you will, were very generous with us with sharing information and helping us along the way. And then now we're kind of on the other side of that equation, where Josh especially, and me to a smaller extent, are helping to mentor other people, because it's good if we raise the tide for the Valley, then we have a better chance.
That's so fascinating.
And we're still trying to be the best. Look, we're competitive as hell.
So you've done something I actually want to bring up that is what I understand is unheard of in the wine industry. When you started Doubleback, within the first 4 years, you made the Wine Spectator top 100 list, which for those trying to make an analogy here, it's kind of like the NFL, like top 100 players, but for wine.
Yeah, that was a cool accolade. We didn't see that one coming, but it was actually our first vintage, and we were surprised by it.
That's maybe a lot of pressure to make sure the grapes still produce the following.
Yeah. When you start out there, there is pressure there, because we're continuously always still striving to improve every single year, which, improving on failure is pretty easy. Improving on success is a lot harder. To continue raising the bar year after year after year, but we're not afraid of that challenge. And we're continuing to push to continue to raise the bar, even starting from a high plateau.
Well, if you don't mind, would love to give you the last.
Okay. All right.
Test, and we'll cheers.
Let's see if I can get back above 500.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Pinot, and of the Pinots that we make one from Ribbon Ridge.
Okay.
And then we make some from our estate vineyard in the Eola Hills.
You know which estate it could be from?
Yeah, I'm again fairly certain that just based on the nose that this one is from our estate vineyard at Cooley.
Ding, ding, ding. You're correct. You're correct. Just thinking about how crazy the wine, the business is and how competitive it is. I've been meaning to ask you, have you ever, first of all, I see guys like Tom Brady in the headlines every week for a different business or different venture that he's invested in. Have you ever called Brady up and be like, hey, look, man, wine business, this is my realm, this is my domain. Stay out of it. Like this is what I do. You know what I mean?
I've had a few athletes reach out and like thinking about jumping into the wine business. It's like, well, keep your helmet on.
Yeah.
This is not for the faint of heart, and you can't dabble in it. If you actually if you intend to build a business out of it, you can't dabble at it. And we've intended to have a real business from the start. But there was one, I won't tell you who it was, but there was one guy who was like, I think it seems like a fun business to be in. Like, it's fun, but it's so competitive, and you have to be spot on with every single thing that you do if you want to be successful. So you can't just dabble in it.
Do you roll your eyes when you see like a big sort of current former player announce their whole wine and then do a press tour on it? And
the thing that's changed, and I'd like to take a little bit of credit for this, is that a lot of the athletes that are getting into the wine world now are actually really intending to make great wine. It's not the stuff that was stigmatized back in the 90s and early 2000s, where they were just slapping their name on a bottle. Like Damon Heward and Dan Marino are partners on a winery that's right here in Washington. They're making kick-ass wine. C.J. McCollum down in the Willamette Valley, he's making serious wine. Dwayne Wade, I haven't tried it yet, but I know he's making serious wine. It has evolved in a really positive way from that standpoint, which I'm really happy to see.
How do you so if there's all these unique brands, how do you market yours, and how do you think about marketing? It's
got to really have three components to it. Number one is storytelling. And these are not in any order. These are all equals. And for us, all the stories are real. Like none of it's marketing bullshit that we've made up.
Well, not even that. The Mazda video that you made.
Oh yeah.
I felt like I was watching a Ryan Coogler movie. Like that thing was incredible. Did you pay them or did they pay you?
I know. Seriously, no. They actually did pay me, but I should have paid them. It was like a long form commercial for the winery. The quality has to be there. It was one of the risks, for me, is coming back to my hometown. I'm not just representing myself. I'm not just representing my family. I'm representing my town and my region. And so if we made shitty wine, we're not just bringing ourselves down. We're bringing down the whole region.
Damn.
And so there's
was pressure. That something cognizant in your mind from the beginning?
Oh, for sure. We were serious about it from the get-go. And I've always been serious about when I was playing ball. You grow up in a small town like this, you really are raised by the whole community. And so I tried not to screw it up too often. At least in how I obviously had some bad plays, but in terms of just being a good person, I tried to keep that in front of mind. And so that part's always been important. And so the quality has to be there because people are going to pay attention. Win or lose, they're going to pay attention. And then we also the third component to that is scarcity. To be quite honest with you, we've never fully grown into our demand. We didn't make 100,000 cases of some manufactured wine. We're making in many cases, and like some of the wines under 100 cases.
How tempting is that? How much restraint do you have to know that there's demand, but you can't actually sell maybe as much as you want to, just to make sure in the long term it maintains this scarce sort of perception?
Yeah, it is. It's tempting to grow all the way into your demand, and
that's so interesting.
The dollars, the dollars are better. The dollars are there. But there are two reasons that we've chosen not to go that direction. One is it just is hard to maintain the quality that we hang our hat on and grow rapidly to scale. It's really, really hard. You can compromise quality, and we're never going to compromise quality. And then the other reason, quite honestly, is that I remember the great financial crisis, and I remember, because I think.
What effect did that have on you? I mean, that was kind of right after you retired.
Right after I retired, and I just, like everybody else, saw a portfolio kind of just take a huge dip, and I saw what was happening more on a broader scale. There's some lessons that you can only learn if you actually really do feel the pain.
Yeah.
And I felt the pain and watched what happened to people around me and friends and so on. And so I sleep better at night knowing that we have excess demand.
Did you feel like going into this, you needed to approach this with a chip on your shoulder?
Yeah, for sure. I'm still very competitive. Our entire team's competitive. And partly because of that stigma we talked about earlier, there are a lot of people that just kind of expected us to fail, or expected us to make a stereotypically sloppy wine.
Do you have a receipt that you don't have to air someone out? Do you have a receipt you could share? Do you remember someone saying early on, like, Bledsoe can't do this? Come on.
I don't know. I think there were probably some articles back then, but that was that we're doubting whether we could actually make real wine. But my favorite piece of that equation is, some friends and teammates who, buy the wine because they had to, because we're teammates, and then they would send me a text or call me, or like, dude, the wine's actually really good, which is such a backhanded compliment. You're like, oh, we didn't think you were capable of actually producing, but they're like, yeah, no, actually, it's really good wine. And then my other favorite, and this has happened a number of times, where people have tried the wine, had the wine, and didn't know it was ours. And then they turn the bottle around, and you're like, oh shit. And so they'll text me or call me, or like, dude, we tried the wine, we love the wine, didn't know that was you. Good job. So some of that you can take that stigma and you can flip people.
Yeah.
Because they have a lower or a different expectation for what you're going to do, and then you can flip it on them.
And how many people are under the Bledsoe Wine Estate? How many people work under you?
I think our total employee count right now, including our farm company, I think is 65, 66 people.
That's a lot of people. Do you feel like you've had an advantage of spotting talent to help you because of your past career experience over maybe someone else who maybe has had more experience in the wine industry but didn't have the sort of sports background that you have?
I think the fact that this was my hometown actually gave me more of an advantage from that point, at least at the start. Being able to hire Chris Figgins out of the gate was just a major coup for us that really helped put us on the map. And then to have Josh, step into his shoes and take us to even higher places. I think, the fact that this is my hometown was probably more of an advantage there. But the football thing certainly didn't hurt. And also I could afford to pay Figgins what he deserved before we started selling any wine. In terms of our company and our people, that piece to me, I love the wine, I love being in the business, but watching the growth of the people and the culture that we've built at our company is something I'm more proud of. Sustainability to us has always been a really important thing.
Talk about how you're not killing the environment. All this agriculture, the grapes, right? I think that's important to you. Yeah,
it is, but sustainability has multiple meanings. The environmental piece has always been the obvious piece, to us. Like, if we're going to produce something that comes from the earth, we should take care of the earth. I mean, that's just obvious, right? And so we've always really gone the extra mile in creating a true ecosystem around the different vineyards. So, you got a lot of green space, you got a lot of biodiversity. really try to create a true ecosystem like Mother Nature would like. Hopefully she looks back on us with some, favorably because of it, where we plant beautiful flowers around the vineyards that look really nice, but they also attract predatory insects that go into the vines and eat the mites and the aphids that we don't want, rather than having to spray. Our cover crops are very intentional. In most of the vineyards, we don't mow in between rows anymore. We just lay the grass down, helps with water retention. All of these things, we really go the extra mile. But for us, the second pillar of sustainability is one that we're really proud of, and that's around people sustainability. So when you think about farming, particularly in northern latitudes, you're generally talking about contracted seasonal labor. You have people that, at least on the vineyard side, that come and work for you for 7 to 9 months, but then they have to figure out how they're going to feed their family in the wintertime. Whether that's welfare or whether it's traveling south or whatever it is. In 2019, we started our own farming company. And we committed at that time that our crew was going to be at least, if not the highest paid, among the highest paid, in the state. Their health insurance and retirement benefits, right? And really, the biggest thing for those families, for the first time, in their modern family history, they had stability. They didn't have to worry about where their next paycheck was going to come from. They didn't have to worry about what would happen if their child got sick. And so when we embrace that, and I think we're at probably, this is why the numbers are I think we're at like 25 people in a farming company now. The benefit, look, we're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing. That's what we do. We do the right thing. But the benefit that we've seen, or the benefits that we've seen from embracing both of those pillars of sustainability, our vineyards are healthier, like we talked about earlier, so they can withstand more. We don't have to replant as often. But the people that work for us in the vineyards now, they talk about the vines as if they own them. They talk about our vineyards. They don't talk about the boss's vineyards.
What's your leadership style? Are you a lay down the law guy, or are you good cop?
I get to be the good cop. Josh has to be the bad cop.
Okay.
But we're both very intentional and have spent a lot of time with our leadership team focused on building culture. There's so many direct parallels between a football team and a business, or any team, any sports team and a business. You've got to have a great plan. You've got to execute with precision. You've got to learn to embrace adversity. Adversity is not a bad thing unless you don't react to it the right way. But building championship culture is something that has to be very intentional. Yeah. And it has to be embraced by everybody. And and it's a continuous process. It's not like, hey, we've got great culture, now we're done. You have to continuously work to grow and evolve that culture. In terms of leadership style, look, I do a lot of listening. We're so blessed at this company to have fantastic people, and I know that I don't have all the answers. And in many cases, the best things that have happened in our company have not come from the top down, from me or from Josh. Have come from the rest of our team. They've got great creative minds, and they're very competitive. Yeah. And so we've created a very team-centric culture where it doesn't require a taskmaster to micromanage and tell everybody what to do. We've just got self-starters and people that will own their own piece of it.
High agency, super key in any industry, and something that obviously I can appreciate myself with our team. When NFL players come on a podcast, a lot of times people ask them, what was their welcome to NFL moment? Here we ask, what's your welcome to entrepreneurship moment? Do you have a funny story that maybe back in 07, 08, where it's like, oh, holy shit, I'm a business owner. This is real.
Well, I think it was not necessarily a moment, but it was that, really 3 to 4 year stretch that actually went on. So we did our plan. Our plan called for us to be cash flow positive at year 7, right? So 7 years, money going out.
Wow.
And for the first 3
Sounds like a venture capital-backed business.
Yeah. Although we did actually intend to be profitable, which I'm not sure some of the venture capital the backed companies actually ever intend to be profitable. Yeah. Some of them at least. but like that first 3 years of literally just throwing money into the ground, with nothing coming back, was like, oh shit, this is expensive.
And it wasn't all yours though, right? You took investment.
We didn't take investment until like 6 or 7 years ago. This was all our own money.
Wow.
So we bootstrapped the thing until we were profitable. I didn't want to bring investors in before we were established, because I would have had to give up too much of the company.
Yeah.
But after we were established and we were profitable, then I felt comfortable bringing some investors in that then they became marketing agents, and they do a great job of selling wine for us.
Hey, good thing maybe those Pro Bowl checks help sort of extend some life to the company, because the balance sheet was looking negative.
Well, the Pro Bowl checks didn't help with shit, because back in the day we went to the Pro Bowl. If you brought your family over, if you lost the game, you wouldn't have enough to cover your hotel expenses so everybody got really competitive in the fourth quarter because you won twice as much. I think it was like the first year like 15,000 and then 30,000 if you won. So the fourth quarter would get competitive so you could cover your family's expensive hotel shit. And then my first Pro Bowl, actually, I made the mistake. I was only 22, and then we were checking into the hotel, and Jim Kelly, who was one of my heroes, comes walking through. He's like, "Hey kid, good, congrats, making the Pro Bowl." I'm like, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Kelly." He goes, "Hey, what room you in?" I'm like, "Oh, 1216. Swing on by." He goes, "Okay, great." He put his entire week on my room.
Room service? Just
everything. Bar at the pool, dinners. So I went to check out. I was like, oh shit! So the Pro Bowl did not. No, I lost.
How did you lose money at the Pro Bowl?
Lost money at the Pro Bowl. Like I covered not only myself and our extended family, but then I also covered all of Jim Kelly's stuff. So F you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
He's gonna have to buy a couple of bottles.
He does.
Okay. So maybe he'll make it up on the back end.
I hope so. He's not bought that much wine yet, but he buys some.
Dude, some guys expect you to give them free bottles.
So here's the way that works.
Yeah.
If they buy wine, then I send them every year a Magnum with their number on it.
Okay.
But you don't get it for free. You got to buy wine first, and then you'll get a free bottle.
Buy from your friends.
Yeah, exactly. Buy from your friends.
I'm curious, if you could give advice to the next generation of entrepreneurs, regardless of what they're working on, what would be like the best piece of advice you'd have?
Number one piece of advice is to seek out great mentors. Okay. One of the best things that I did is probably 15 years ago now. Is I helped put together it was sort of a knockoff YPO type deal, but we put together a group of business guys down in Bend, very accomplished guys in very different industries, and we would get together in a confidential setting once a month, and meeting of the minds. And that was business school for me. Wow. That was business school for me, because we would sit down and I would get to hear about their business issues. I would get to lay my soul bare with what we were thinking about, what we were doing, and I'll never make a big business decision without consulting that group. And to me, it was just the kind of the surprisingly cool piece of it is that successful people are dying to share their knowledge. At least that's been my experience. If you sit down with somebody that's been successful and you're young and you really are inquisitive, they'll give you the answers to the test. Yeah. And so that would be number one at the very top of the list. Humble yourself, know that you don't know, and then seek out mentors and ask them the questions and keep asking the questions until you understand. Would be number one on that list. And then if you want to go beyond that, if there's an industry that you think you really want to get in and you want to start your own business, I always encourage people to go get a job and work in that industry first. Yeah. See what greatness looks like if you work. Yeah, and go see what works. And like you said earlier, see what doesn't work. Yeah. Get inside and really study that. Before we get out of here, Drew, what can this become, right? Bledsoe Winery, what do you want this to become? What's the ceiling? Like where do we stand in the, from a business standpoint, from the wine, what is the ceiling here? Yeah, it's an interesting question. Manifest it, man. That's what we do. And the reason I say it's interesting is that if you went back 7 years into the past. It's maybe 8 years now. We only had one winery at Doubleback. We only had 5 employees, and now it's 3 wineries with 65, 67 employees. We're in the Willamette Valley. We have 5 vineyards here. We only had 1 back in the day. So I couldn't have envisioned back then what it is now.
Yeah.
And so the reason I kind of laugh about that is I can tell you what I think it's going to be, which is just this continual slow growth evolution based on quality first, based on building relationships with our customers. And that's our plan. Our next 5 years is continued slow growth. But I'm also open that, hey, it could change in a way I can't even imagine, But we have our 5-year plan laid out for us that calls to continue doing what we're doing, and we love it, and we don't want to ruin it by trying to, change direction. But who knows? Who knows?
Well, hey, one thing I do know, this is an incredible backdrop, incredible setting.
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
No, it's like we were saying earlier. Like, what is one of the? There are a lot of hidden challenges in the wine business, but there are also a lot of hidden benefits. And one of the hidden benefits is that the great wine grapes in the world, they like to grow in beautiful places.
Well, this certainly is one. Another great episode of the Athletes and Assets podcast with the NFL legend Drew Bledsoe. Drew, incredible backdrop, and thank you for having us here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for making the trek to Walla Walla.
Man, we'll do it again.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. You got to come back for episode 2.